Have a fun question for you. So this
Yeah.
typically comes up a lot in information security circles, cybersecurity space. How do you feel about the social security number as like a sensitive item for folks? What are your thoughts there?
Good question.
Probably not that controversial. My view is like from our customer's perspective, in our OSINT report, we find it 100% of the time. And so my assumption is that attackers can find it 100% of the time. Now the question is, what does that mean? Number one, I don't think you should be giving it out. Okay, so there's no need to make the problem worse. That said, I do think that any institution that uses it for verification is not doing their job. It's public, right? Like it's a public domain question. And I think that like we advise people to select vendors that do not rely on poor methods of authentication. And I think that there are many industries that are still pretending that that is a good way to distinguish the real person from not. And I think they're living in stone ages. Truly, I think they're living in stone ages.
So well, I guess two parts here, because I think this is a fun topic for folks in
Yeah.
general. So, what have you seen out there that is a better source for verification? And if you haven't seen a good one, what are your thoughts on an improvement in that space to help validate we are indeed humans and US citizens?
No, I mean, I don't know if like I'm qualified to weigh in on like the proof of humanity, like AI debate, if that's what you're getting at. But like, I do think that, I mean, we have great multi-factor today. I think there's issues on adoption, but like, I don't think a social security number is a good way to differentiate. I'd rather, again, I don't love SMS multi-factor, but that is better. In my opinion, it at least makes an attacker work for it, right? Like the social security number is free. Like it's not, I I am of the opinion that it should be rooted out as a, not to say that we shouldn't have a social security number to identify for whatever as a, call it a UUID for our government services, right? Like, I think that's fine, but to say that it's this safely guarded number, I think is insane in 2026. I don't know. I don't know. I think there are a lot of smart people who are probably thinking about that problem. For me, it's just reflect the reality, which is, and we ask this question, by the way, when we do like a financial hardening module. It's like, let's try and change the password on your bank account and let's see what they put you through. And if it's not that difficult for you to change it, then it's not that difficult for someone who wants to hurt you to change it. And so maybe we should consider a different institution, or can we ask about moving to a different bracket within the institution to make sure there's wire verification, right? Has to have a phone call, right? Again, anything that's a little bit challenging for an attacker is better than the status quo. And again, I think social security number is just it's nothing. It's truly not. It's not a filter.
I know Mike is in the same boat, but I appreciate that as someone who was in the military and had all of our information stolen from
Yeah.
the
And
three-letter.
OPM.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But while you were speaking, I was thinking of something, and I'm curious to get your take. So I'm curious if, obviously, voice is out, right? Just because of the technology today, it's very easy to clone. Maybe there's some digital signatures that you could pick up, but I'm curious if in the future you will put your fingerprint on your camera and like it'll be able to read your fingerprint and that will be used as a source of verification because that's like something that's always on you, right? So
Yeah.
going to like two factor. No? Okay, Mike's saying no. So let's
I don't know. Again, like, I don't know that we're thinking about like being like, I don't know, whatever, pick your authentication provider, right? Like 2.0. I don't have like the strongest opinion on what the right. I do think though that like clearly the biometric stuff is like a rat race. People are trying to, you know, build it and then copy it and so on and so forth. And I think cyber is the same way, right? Like we'll fight this battle between, you know, attackers and defenders for the next 1,000 years. And, you know, I don't know what the right form factor is that's going to be resistant for hundreds of years. I don't know. It brings up some existential questions about like what makes us uniquely human and uniquely us. You know, I tend to think a little bit more like today, like what are the risks people face today? And I would say like Face ID, for example, I think is like mostly good. But there are certain sort of implementation questions that we're very specific on of who should have access to Face ID, et cetera. But like by and large, I think that stuff is for certainly for most people is very acceptable.
So to speak to the fingerprint thing, did you
Yeah.
not see the news article like maybe 5 years ago? It was the German Prime Minister Merkel or whatever she was. They were able to copy our fingerprints because the resolution was so high, and replicate our fingerprint and open an iPhone or something like that.
I did not see
No, I
that.
didn't either. That sounds like the Onion article.
No, it's legit, legit.
No, I mean, listen, there are certainly sort of like these kind of sci-fi type situations that I'm sure you've all seen in the movies where they're able to lift it off like a keypad or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know. I think those types of things are they're fun to think about for sure. For sure. And I'm sure that there are companies that like are thinking about it. It's not our lane, quite frankly. There's probably better people to give you an interesting answer than that.
That's fair. I'll take that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the common things that you see that people are doing that people everyone, right? Because not everyone is going to be an executive or a high net worth
Yeah.
individual, but privacy affects everyone, and I think we've seen recently that like gone are the days of like, oh, I'm too small to hack or to
Yeah.
target, right? So what do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, I would, the first thing I would and again, we spoke about this earlier, but the idea of like defeatism is like probably like my biggest notion I try and fight and sort of like the broad conversation, which is my information is out there, therefore I give up, right? And there's no improvement I could possibly make. And I think that's kind of like a perfect being the enemy of good mistake. And so for us, I think like acknowledging that there are relative improvements you can make that do meaningfully impact risk, I think is like the number one thing that we will fight, even as an industry, right? And I think this extends to the security community at large, that just because there exists incredible capacity that some defender or some attackers can use, and you hear this with like quantum stuff. Oh, like, how are you preparing for the post quantum future? Like, oh, well, there's all encryption will be broken and therefore like nothing is like I just again like I think that attitude is probably like the biggest excuse for why people don't take this stuff seriously. And again, I think one of the reasons why we're so passionate about cyber as healthcare is because I think it does cut through that argument a little bit. It does mean, yes, there are things that you can do today to improve relatively, and that actually can make you much better off from, call it like a longevity perspective, minimizing the likelihood you'll have that sort of catastrophic attack that really, really, cuts you down. Did that answer your question?
In a way, yeah.
Well, ask a follow up, AJ.
I guess
you're
like
leaving us in suspense here.
yeah, I guess like so we obviously have this podcast, for example. We both own property.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the things that you would recommend to us as people who are trying to grow our social media presence, who are public, who are military or veterans, so our data has been out there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you recommend?
I mean, certainly being aware of like what is public and what is private is like a very important starting spot. And I would just make sure you're not like similar to the social security question, like you're not reliant on something that's public to protect you, right? Like, so I think an address, another great example, like we definitely find a lot of addresses for people. And if possible, like think about ways to conceal property ownership through limited liability corporations and trusts and stuff like that. Will make it more difficult for someone to find out where you live. Now, again, if it's already been exposed, I would say putting the toothpaste back in a toothpaste tube is not going to happen. So, it's important to be realistic with your effort about what's actually making a difference and what's not. From a homeowner's perspective, I also think about even things around home and home network, right? Like, I would prefer you not use the standard issued crappy hardware that's given to you by your ISP, right? Don't use the default network password that was given to you. Don't have your first and last name home in the publicly broadcasted Wi-Fi name and stuff like that. I think is, again, like each individual action probably doesn't change the game, but I think they compound together for 10,000 little steps to make you much less likely to be successfully compromised.
Let my fiance know that because she thought it was interesting because I never put my name associated to stuff like my phone or whatever. So it's
Yeah,
always some random name. She's like, "Who's this?
yeah, yeah,
Whose phone was
exactly.
this?"
It can come it comes with cost, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
it's there is certainly like a paralysis that from going to extreme. And again, I think for us, like we're very experienced with a certain type of customer and finding the right balance as far as like what they'll actually use and what they won't. And so I think like knowing, like we think about both technical capacity and capacity for friction in terms of making like a proper program and sort of, there are easy things like a privacy screen on your cell phone for us is like a total no-brainer that pretty much anyone can deal with. At the same time, YubiKey is probably not, right? Like it does take a special type of person to be okay with carrying a physical key that is going to serve as a multi-factor for like critical systems. So yeah, is that a better answer for your question?
Pretty good answer.
Yeah.
I have, because we're getting close to time, I did want to
Yeah.
ask this before we run out. So you mentioned with banks, you were talking about that you could get people to change to a different tier. Could you talk more about that? I've never heard of that. So that's new to me. A different client group, I guess. Yeah, could you explain that more?
It's just that like to be like pretty succinct about it, because I think it's specific to the financial service provider. The higher tier you are within a bank, the more options they will give you. That includes security options. Phone verification to authorize a wire costs them money. Okay. Oftentimes you have to meet a threshold with that bank to get that service available. Even things like other types of multi-factor are not always available, and you have to ask for them. Again, I think there are like tiers of client service where they will make that stuff available for you. I think for us, it usually results more in vendor change if they're open to it, right? I can't just like make you have more or something like that. But it's how do we find a financial service provider that's going to give you the protection you need? And we're not paid, to be clear, by any of them. Like we are just like making like cyber health first really is our governing value, and we want to make sure that, again, for us, like trust and brand comes above everything else, and that really wants to make sure that like incentives are like really properly aligned.
Probably like you probably have the feeling like when before I got into cybersecurity, I worked at a car rental agency, and so if you told me at the time, I could tell you which ones sucked to work with because we had to call them every time they validated. So you could probably do the same. Like, yeah, this bank really sucks to work with, or this company, they're not very helpful. So you probably get that same feeling after working with lots and lots of clients and having to work with the different institutions. I'm sure.
We have hunches, but we tend to keep our opinions to ourselves. Again,
Fair.
from a security and a privacy perspective, we will not be shy when we think something is not great with an individual member. Like if you are using a certain product, even if it's a security product, and I think it's questionable, we'll try and migrate you off it. But if you're not willing to do it, I'd rather you do that than nothing, right?